Subject appears docile now. I reported into my recording device, tapping a claw against the transparent barrier. Though I would not trust this apparent calm, the creature inside, a human male who called himself Marcus Reid, sat cross-legged on the floor of his containment cell. His eyes remained closed, his breathing measured. Too measured. It was the calculated stillness of something waiting to strike. I am Zorvan Tral, lead xenobiologist for the Velrakian Dominion Special Acquisitions Fleet. My entire career has been devoted to cataloging, studying, and when necessary neutralizing dangerous species across the known galaxy. In 27 cycles of service I had never encountered anything quite like humans. The High Command thought I was overreacting. "They are soft," Admiral Pravik had snorted during our last transmission. "No claws, no venom, minimal muscle density compared to a Velrakian warrior. What could possibly warrant this level of security?" "With respect, Admiral," I replied, trying to keep the sarcasm from my voice, "appearances can be deceiving." Pravik had simply flicked his facial ridges in dismissal, the Velrakian equivalent of an eye roll. "Just finish your assessment and report back. The High Council wants to know if Earth represents any genuine threat to our expansion plans." I clicked off the communication and turned back toward the containment cell. The human was watching me now, those strange round pupils focused directly on mine. I felt a chill ripple through my scales. "Good morning, Dr. Tral," the human said with that disarming expression they called a smile. "Sleep well?" "Velrakians require minimal rest compared to humans," I replied stiffly, not wanting to engage but finding myself doing so anyway. "I have been reviewing the combat footage from your capture." "Find anything interesting?" he asked, stretching his arms above his head as if he were lounging at a leisure facility rather than being held captive on an alien vessel. "Yes," I admitted. "You killed 4 of our most elite hunters before they managed to subdue you." The human shrugged. "They came at me with those fancy energy weapons. Hardly sporting." "They were Velrakian death commandos," I said, unable to keep the incredulity from my voice. "Each one stands over 9 feet tall and can crush titanium with their bare hands." "Yeah, they were pretty strong," Reid conceded, examining his fingernails with apparent boredom. "But slow. So slow." I bristled at the casual dismissal of our military pride. The death commandos trained from hatching to become the perfect killing machines. Their reflexes were legendary throughout 3 galactic quadrants. "Our warriors are enhanced with the genetic material of the Karvax," I said, referring to our planet's apex predator with no small amount of pride. "Perhaps you'd like to see one up close." We brought a specimen on board specifically for combat assessment. For the first time I saw a flicker of genuine interest cross the human's face. "That sounds like fun. I have been getting bored in here." "The Karvax has never been defeated in one-on-one combat," I continued, enjoying the chance to educate this arrogant mammal. "It evolved in the harshest environment on Velrak Prime. Nothing survives the red deserts, except the Karvax and whatever the Karvax permits to live." Reid stretched again, his casual manner never faltering. "When do I get to meet this superstar?" I tapped commands into my datapad, summoning my research team. "Right now, actually. The command wants a direct comparison between human combat capabilities and our apex predator." "And if your big bad monster kills me?" Reid asked, finally standing and approaching the barrier between us. "Then we will know humans pose no significant threat to our expansion plans," I replied truthfully. The human's lips curled upward, but this wasn't the disarming smile from before. This expression sent another involuntary shiver down my spine. "I'm actually counting on you putting us in the same room," he said quietly. Before I could process that disturbing statement, my assistant, Nivex, arrived with the security team. "The combat arena is prepared. Lead researcher," she reported, her eyes darting nervously toward the human. "The Karvax has been agitated as requested." "Excellent," I said, gesturing toward the containment field. "Transport the human. Full security protocols." 4 guards surrounded Reid as the barrier dissolved. They applied the magnetically sealed restraints to his wrists and ankles while keeping their shock staffs trained on him. The human offered no resistance, that unsettling smile never leaving his face. "You seem awfully confident for someone about to face certain death," I observed as we walked down the corridor toward the ship's central arena. Reid chuckled. Doc, where I come from, we have a saying, Marines don't die, they go to hell and regroup. I don't understand the reference, I admitted. I'm a Force Recon Marine, he explained. We specialize in operating behind enemy lines, often outnumbered, outgunned, and with minimal support. And this makes you qualified to face a Karvax? I asked skeptically. Nope, Reid replied cheerfully. Nothing makes anyone qualified to face death. You just do it anyway. We arrived at the massive circular chamber that served as both research area and entertainment venue for the ship's crew. Word had spread quickly about the upcoming spectacle, and the observation galleries were packed with Velrakians eager to witness the confrontation. The arena itself was 100 meters in diameter, floored with the red sand of our homeworld to make the Karvax comfortable. Various terrain features, boulders, small hillocks, even a shallow pool of water provided tactical options. You are giving me quite the playground, Reid observed, surveying the arena as the guards removed his restraints. We want accurate data, I explained. This simulates natural conditions. Across the arena, a massive door began to rise. The spectators fell silent in anticipation. Even Reid stopped his incessant commentary as the first scraping sounds of claws on metal reached our ears. The Karvax emerged from the shadows, its 8-meter length uncoiling as it stalked into the light. The beast resembled what humans might call a lizard, but that comparison failed to capture its terrifying majesty. Armored scales, the color of dried blood, covered a muscular body supported by 6 powerful limbs. Its triangular head housed rows of serrated teeth and 3 pairs of eyes that could see across multiple spectrums. The spiked tail ended in a club that could shatter rock. That's your big bad monster? Reid asked, and I was pleased to finally hear respect in his voice. The Karvax is the perfect predator, I confirmed proudly. Intelligent, ruthless, and virtually indestructible. Its hide can withstand direct energy weapon strikes. Its senses can detect prey from kilometers away. Its venom can— It has venom too, Reid interrupted. That seems like overkill. Nature does not concern itself with fairness, I replied. The Karvax evolved to dominate. Reid nodded slowly, then began removing his uniform top, revealing a torso crisscrossed with scars. Mind if I ask what weapons I'm allowed? I gestured to a small rack near the arena entrance. Choose one. It would be pointless data if you were completely defenseless. The human approached the weapon rack, examining each option carefully. There was a shock staff, a ceremonial blade, and a sonic disruptor, all traditional weapons used in Velrakian honor duels. To my surprise, Reid selected the blade, the most primitive option. This will do, he said, testing its weight and balance. An interesting choice, I noted. Though ultimately futile, the blade cannot penetrate Karvax scales. Reid shrugged. I like keeping things simple. With preparations complete, I retreated to the observation platform where Nivex waited with our monitoring equipment. Subject appears surprisingly calm, she noted, adjusting the biometric sensors. His heart rate is elevated but within normal parameters for human physical exertion. Begin recording, I instructed. This will be a landmark study in comparative xenobiology, the first documented encounter between humanity's military elite and our evolutionary pinnacle. Below us, the Karvax had noticed Reid. Its massive head swung toward the human, all 6 eyes focusing with predatory intensity. Reid, for his part, had taken a defensive stance, blade held low and to his side. The human will attempt to evade initially, I predicted. Their species relies on endurance rather than strength. He will likely try to tire the Karvax. That strategy has never succeeded, Nivex observed. The Karvax can maintain peak performance for up to 7 continuous hours. The beast charged without warning, covering 30 meters in seconds. The gallery erupted in appreciative clicks and hisses as the Karvax demonstrated its legendary speed. What happened next caused the entire observation deck to fall silent. Instead of fleeing, Reid charged directly toward the monster. At the last possible moment, he dropped into a slide beneath the creature's slashing claws, dragging the blade along its underbelly as he passed. The Karvax roared, not in pain, as the blade couldn't penetrate its scales, but in surprise. It whirled with unexpected agility, tail sweeping in a devastating arc. Reid was already moving. He leapt over the tail, rolled to his feet, and pressed his attack, aiming not for the armored body but for the more vulnerable eye stalks. Fascinating, I murmured, recording my observations. The human instantly identified potential vulnerabilities. Most species retreat from the Karvax's initial charge. His movements are unusually efficient. Navex added, her voice tinged with reluctant admiration. No wasted energy. The battle continued with an intensity that had the entire gallery leaning forward. The Karvax, accustomed to prey that fled or froze, seemed genuinely confused by Reid's aggressive counters. When it lunged, he dodged and struck at joints or sensory organs. When it retreated to reassess, he pressed forward, never allowing it to dictate the engagement. Is forcing the Karvax to fight defensively, I realized aloud. I have never seen this behavior pattern before. Reid sustained injuries, a deep gash across his shoulder from a claw, a grazing blow from the tail that would have pulverized a Velrakian, but he fought through the pain with grim determination. After 20 minutes of continuous combat, both combatants separated, circling warily. The Karvax was bleeding from several minor wounds around its eyes and mouth. Reid was covered in sweat and blood but showed no signs of surrendering. You said its hide can withstand energy weapons, Reid called up to me, never taking his eyes off the predator. What about its mouth? Eyes? Joints? Less protected, I admitted. But no creature has ever maintained proximity long enough to exploit those weaknesses effectively. Reid nodded, processing this information. It's smart, he said. Keeps adapting to my approach. Reminds me of hunting big cats back home. The Karvax chose that moment to implement a new strategy. It retreated to the far side of the arena, then began circling rapidly, using its superior speed to create distance while it recovered. Classic Karvax hunting pattern, Navex observed. It will wear down the prey, then strike when exhaustion sets in. But Reid did something unexpected. He planted the blade in the sand and began removing his boots. What is he doing? I wondered aloud. Unknown, Navex replied, equally puzzled. Perhaps preparing for better traction. Reid finished removing his footwear, then tore strips from his discarded uniform top. He wrapped these around his hands, creating makeshift padding. Then, to our complete bewilderment, he sat down in the sand and closed his eyes. The gallery erupted in confused chatter. The Karvax, too, seemed perplexed by this behavior. It slowed its circling, head tilted in what almost looked like curiosity. Is he surrendering? Navex asked. No, I replied, studying his posture. This is something else. Reid remained motionless for nearly a minute while the Karvax cautiously approached. When the beast was approximately 10 meters away, the human's eyes snapped open. He rose in one fluid motion, leaving the blade behind, and assumed a balanced stance with open hands. He's abandoned his weapon. Navex gasped. This makes no logical sense. The Karvax, perhaps interpreting this as submission, lunged forward with jaws wide, a killing strike. What happened next would forever change the Velrakian Dominion's assessment of human combat capabilities. Reid sidestepped the massive jaws with millimeters to spare, then grabbed the sensitive membranes around the nearest eye stalk. Using the Karvax's own momentum, he swung himself onto the creature's back, immediately scrambling forward to the junction where the neck met the skull. The Karvax thrashed violently, trying to dislodge the human. Reid clung to the armored ridges, working his way toward a specific spot he seemed to have identified during their earlier exchanges. He's targeting the neural cluster, I realized with growing amazement. How could he possibly know about that vulnerability? Even with our advanced scanning technology, we only discovered that weakness after decades of research. Reid had positioned himself directly above the quarter-sized gap in the Karvax's armored plates where its primary nerve bundle was closest to the surface. With terrifying precision, he drove his fist down onto this spot with every ounce of strength his body could generate. The Karvax convulsed, its roar turning into a strangled gurgle. Reid struck again and again, focusing all his attacks on that single point with machine-like precision. On the fifth strike, something gave way. The massive predator's legs buckled, and it collapsed onto the sand, its body twitching uncontrollably. Reid maintained his position, continuing to target the neural cluster until the creature lay completely still. Silence fell over the arena. Not a single Velrakian made a sound as Reid calmly climbed off the Karvax, retrieved his blade from the sand, and looked up at the observation platform. So, he called out, breathing heavily but with that disturbing smile back on his face, still think humans aren't a threat? I stared down at him, my scientific detachment completely shattered. This single human had defeated our apex predator using nothing but primitive tools and an impossible understanding of xenobiology. Oh, I managed to ask, how did you know about the neural cluster? Reid tapped his temple with a bloodied finger. Pattern recognition, Doc. Everything has a weakness. Your monster has 6 limbs, distributed nervous system, redundant organs, but it still needed a primary command center for coordinated movement. I watched how it reacted when I struck different areas. The neck junction was the only spot where minor hits caused major reactions. That's impossible, Nivex whispered beside me. No species can analyze biological structures that quickly during active combat. You are thinking like a Velrakian, Reid replied, somehow hearing her despite the distance. Humans evolved as pursuit predators. We are not the strongest or fastest, so we became the smartest hunters. We observe, adapt, and overcome. It's what we do. I felt a cold dread settling into my bones as I activated the communication link to High Command. This was no longer a simple research expedition. The implications of what we'd witnessed would reshape our entire military strategy. Admiral Pravik, I said when the connection established, I strongly recommend we abort all plans for Earth conquest immediately. Explain yourself, Researcher Tral, came the irritated response. I gestured toward the arena, where Reid stood victorious over our defeated apex predator. A human defeated the Karvax in single combat, using primitive weapons and deductive reasoning. There was a long pause before the Admiral responded. One lucky human doesn't change our assessment. Sir, I insisted, this wasn't luck, and this human claims to be merely a standard warrior, not even their elite. He's lying, Pravik dismissed. No standard warrior could defeat a Karvax. I looked down at Reid, who was now casually sitting on the fallen predator's back, using a piece of cloth to clean blood from his various wounds. Permission to continue testing, I requested. Granted, Pravik replied, but I expect your final report to provide a realistic assessment, not this overwrought caution. As the communication ended, Reid called up again. So, what's next? Got any other pets you want me to play with? I signaled the security team to retrieve him. We have much to discuss, human Reid. Call me Marcus, he replied with that unnerving smile. I think we are going to be spending a lot of time together, Doc. As the security team approached, weapons raised cautiously, Reid held up his hands in mock surrender. Don't worry, boys. If I wanted to escape, I'd have done it already. The casual confidence in his statement sent another chill through me. The truly terrifying thought wasn't that he might be right, it was the growing certainty that he absolutely was. And somewhere on Earth there were billions more just like him. You have the most extraordinary survival instinct I have ever documented, I told Reid 3 days after the Karvax incident. We sat in what the human called an upgraded cell, a laboratory space modified to accommodate his biological needs while allowing for more detailed study. It's not instinct, Doc, Reid replied, stretching his remarkable limbs. The wounds from the Karvax fight were already healing at a rate our medical team found disturbing. It's training. Humans don't rely on genetic programming like you Velrakians. I made a notation on my datapad. Explain. Your species evolves through careful genetic manipulation, right? Your warriors get Karvax DNA. Your scientists get enhanced brain capacity, so on and so forth. I nodded, impressed by his perception. Our civilization has perfected biological specialization over 12,000 years. Reid laughed. That's your problem right there. Humans rejected genetic specialization. We are generalists by nature, adaptable to virtually any environment or situation. Put a banker in the wilderness for a month, and he will figure out how to survive. Put a soldier in a classroom. She becomes a teacher. Inefficient, I observed. Resilient, he countered. Your death commandos are physically superior to me in every measurable way, but they only know how to fight according to their programming. I could see the patterns, adapt to them, and exploit them. I wanted to dismiss his claims, but the evidence was difficult to ignore. 4 elite Velrakian warriors dead, 1 apex predator defeated, and this human sitting before me recovering rapidly and studying us with those unsettling eyes. Admiral Pravik wants another demonstration, I said finally. He believes the Karvax incident was anomalous. Reid raised an eyebrow. What kind of demonstration? Strategic capability assessment. A simulation of sorts. A game? Reid perked up immediately. I love games. Not exactly, I hedged. Our military tacticians have prepared a scenario like chess, he interrupted, or more like a war game, similar to your concept of war games. Yes, you will be tested against our best strategic commander. Reid grinned, an expression I was beginning to recognize as anticipation rather than amusement. When do we start? Commander Drax Vorn was the pride of the Velrakian Military Academy. His tactical genius had secured 3 major expansions of Dominion territory without a single significant casualty among our forces. His neural enhancements gave him the ability to process battlefield information 20 times faster than a standard Velrakian. As I escorted Reid into the simulation chamber, Vorn barely acknowledged our presence, his attention fixed on the holographic display showing the battlefield scenario. This is Commander Vorn, I introduced. He will be your opponent today. Vorn finally turned, his enhanced eyes enlarged and modified with additional light receptors sweeping over the human dismissively. This is the specimen that defeated a Karvax, he asked, his voice carrying the artificial resonance common to all neurally enhanced Velrakians. It looks even softer than reported. Reid smiled, extending a hand in what I recognized as a human greeting gesture. Marcus Reid, Force Recon, nice setup you got here. Vorn ignored the outstretched hand. The parameters are simple. You will command a simulated force attempting to neutralize my defensive position. Both sides have equivalent resources. Victory is achieved by eliminating enemy command or securing 3 strategic locations. Sounds straightforward, Reid said, walking around the holographic display with interest. What's the catch? No catch, Vorn replied. Just a controlled assessment of human strategic capability. I observed the exchange with growing interest. Where Reid had shown aggressive confidence with the Karvax, here he displayed something different, a calm, analytical approach as he studied the battlefield layout. Those mountains to the north, Reid said, pointing to a feature on the display. Are they navigable? By specialized units only, Vorn answered. Standard forces cannot traverse that terrain. Reid nodded, continuing his circuit of the display. And these urban centers? Populated? Simulated civilian populations. Yes. Strategic Point Bravo is located in the largest settlement. Rules of engagement regarding civilians. Vorn seemed surprised by the question. They are not relevant to the exercise. They are always relevant, Reid countered, his tone hardening slightly. But I understand this is your simulation, your rules. The commander looked at me with what I interpreted as confusion. I made a notation about the human's apparent concern for non-combatants, an unexpected tactical consideration. Take your position, Vorn instructed, gesturing to the control interface on the opposite side of the holographic display. You have 3 minutes to familiarize yourself with the command system before the simulation begins. Reid approached the interface cautiously, studying the alien controls. Mind if I ask a few questions about how this works? 2 minutes 50 seconds remaining, Vorn replied coldly. I moved closer to Reid. The left hemisphere controls unit selection. The right initiates commands. The central display allows you to view different sectors of the battlefield. Thanks, Doc, Reid said quietly. Your boss isn't much for sportsmanship, is he? Commander Vorn has never been defeated in simulation, I explained. He sees this as a waste of his valuable time. Reid nodded, his fingers quickly testing the various controls. I get it. Nobody likes having their assumptions challenged. When the preparation period ended, a tone sounded throughout the chamber. The holographic battlefield expanded, now showing both forces in their starting positions. Vorn's units were entrenched around the 3 strategic locations, with reserve forces positioned for rapid response. Reid's forces were consolidated at the southern edge of the battlefield. Begin, announced the simulation system. I expected Reid to immediately deploy his forces, but instead he spent several minutes simply observing the battlefield, occasionally zooming in on specific locations without issuing any commands. Is the interface malfunctioning? Vorn asked impatiently after 5 minutes had passed. Nope, Reid replied without looking up, just getting the lay of the land. While you delay, my forces are strengthening their positions, Vorn pointed out. Reid finally looked up with that unsettling smile. That's fine, I'm not in a rush. After 10 minutes of minimal activity during which Reid had only sent small scout units to various locations, Vorn's patience evidently expired. This is pointless, he declared. The human clearly does not understand military strategy at our level. Reid chuckled. Maybe I understand something you don't, Commander. Enlighten me, Vorn challenged. You have spent the last 10 minutes reinforcing positions against a frontal assault that was never coming, Reid explained, finally beginning to issue a flurry of commands. While you have been focused on defense, I have been mapping your sensor grid with minimal units. The holographic display suddenly shifted, showing small Reid-controlled units that had circumvented Vort's main defenses, approaching the strategic locations from unexpected angles. Impossible, Vorn hissed, his enhanced fingers flying over his control interface. My sensor network covers the entire approach. Your sensor network has predictable gaps, Reid countered, continuing to issue commands at an impressive rate. Standard military doctrine always has blind spots. You focused on covering the most likely avenues of approach and neglected the improbable ones. What followed was fascinating to observe. Vorthaz, with his neurally enhanced processing speed, should have been able to counter Reid's unorthodox approach. But the human strategy seemed specifically designed to disrupt pattern-based thinking. You are dividing your forces too thinly, Vorn observed as Reid's units scattered across the battlefield. This violates basic strategic principles. Your basic strategic principles, Reid corrected. Human warfare evolved differently. Within 30 minutes, the simulation had transformed. What began as a straightforward confrontation between two opposing forces had become an asymmetrical conflict. Reid's smaller units harassed Vorsen's defensive positions, never engaging directly but constantly forcing redeployments and responses. This is not how war is conducted, Vorn complained, visibly frustrated. You refuse to engage in proper battle. This is exactly how humans fight when outmatched. Reid replied, we call it asymmetrical warfare. Why should I attack your strongest points when I can achieve my objectives by exploiting your weaknesses? As the simulation continued, Reid's unorthodox approach began yielding results. His forces had surrounded Strategic Point Alpha without directly engaging Vor's main defensive force. Meanwhile, multiple small units approached Strategic Point Bravo from 3 different directions. Fascinating, I murmured, recording observations. The human prioritizes achieving objectives over defeating enemy forces. It's cowardly, Vorn snapped, growing increasingly agitated as his carefully constructed defensive network failed to counter Reid's fluid approach. It's efficient, Reid corrected. Why should I sacrifice my forces in head-to-head combat when I don't need to? War isn't about fair fights, it's about winning. The simulation reached a critical point when Reid's forces simultaneously infiltrated the perimeters of all 3 strategic locations. Vortin, forced to defend multiple positions, began making uncharacteristic errors in unit deployment. You are cheating, the commander accused when Reid's smallest units somehow bypassed the heaviest defenses around Strategic Point Charlie. This simulation must be malfunctioning. Reid shook his head. I'm just exploiting the fact that your defensive algorithms are too predictable. Your forces always respond the same way to the same stimuli. Show them a threat from the east. They shift resources eastward, creating an opening in the west. That's standard tactical doctrine. That's your problem, Reid said with remarkable calm. Humans don't follow standard anything. We adapt, improvise, and overcome. Within minutes, Reid's forces had secured 2 strategic locations and were on the verge of capturing the 3rd. Vorn, growing desperate, consolidated all his remaining units around his command center. A mistake, Reid observed. You just abandoned Strategic Point Bravo entirely. I'm preventing you from achieving total victory, Vorn insisted. My command center is impregnable with these forces concentrated here. Reid tapped his controls thoughtfully. See, that's another fundamental difference between us. You are now fighting to avoid losing. I'm still fighting to win. With that, Reid issued a series of rapid commands. His forces at Strategic Point Alpha suddenly abandoned their position, racing toward Bravo. Simultaneously, the units threatening Vorsen's command center pulled back, seemingly retreating. You see, Vort said triumphantly, your strategy has failed. You cannot take all 3 points, and you cannot defeat my command center. Reid waited patiently as the simulation continued. 3 minutes later, alarms blared across Vorthan's interface. What? The commander exclaimed, staring at his display in disbelief. How did your forces reach the command center? I didn't go through your defenses, Reid explained. I went under them. Those retreating units weren't retreating, they were setting demolition charges beneath your position while you were focused on surface threats. The simulation ended with Reid's forces controlling 2 strategic points and Vorn's command center in ruins. Simulation complete. Victory. Challenger, announced the system. Silence fell over the chamber. Commander Vorn stared at the display, his enhanced eyes wide with disbelief. I busied myself with recording the outcome, trying to maintain scientific objectivity despite my growing concern about what these demonstrations meant for our plans regarding Earth. You cheated, Vorn finally stated, his voice lacking its usual confidence. I adapted, Reid corrected. You fought according to established Velrakian military doctrine. I fought like a human. I cleared my throat. The simulation parameters allowed for all tactics employed. The victory is legitimate, Commander. Vorn stormed out of the chamber without another word, his rigid posture betraying his fury. Reid watched him go with a surprisingly sympathetic expression. He will be okay, the human said. Nobody likes losing, especially when you are used to being the best. You seem to understand our psychology well, I observed. Reid shrugged. People are people, even when they are 9-foot-tall lizard people with facial ridges. Pride, anger, frustration, those are universal. I made another notation. Your understanding of other species gives you a tactical advantage. It's not just tactical, Reid replied, his voice softening slightly. Understanding others is fundamental to human society. We are social creatures. We survive through cooperation as much as competition. An interesting contradiction, I noted. Your species excels at both warfare and empathy. They are 2 sides of the same coin, Doc. Understanding your enemy is the first step to defeating them or making peace with them. I looked up sharply at that last comment. Making peace? Reid nodded. Why do you think I haven't tried to escape? I'm gathering information, sure, but I'm also trying to understand you Velrakians. There might be a way for our species to coexist without conflict. Admiral Pravik would disagree, I said cautiously. The Dominion expands, that is our nature. Nature can change, Reid replied. That's kind of our specialty. Admiral Pravik arrived on our research vessel the following day. His massive frame barely fit through the laboratory doorway as he entered, his scales gleaming with the ceremonial oils of high command. This is the human? He demanded, examining Reid with obvious disdain. Marcus Reid, the human introduced himself, showing none of the fear or deference most species displayed when confronted by a Velrakian admiral. You must be the boss lizard. Pravik's facial ridges flattened against his skull, a sign of dangerous irritation. I have reviewed the combat and simulation data. They are concerning. Told you so, Reid said with a grin. Silence. The admiral snapped. You will answer questions when asked. Specimen. Reid raised his hands in mock surrender but maintained that infuriating smile. Researcher Tral. Pravik continued, turning to me. Your report suggested this human's capabilities might be representative of their species. Explain your reasoning. I activated my data display showing the comprehensive analysis of Reid's physical and cognitive performance. The subject claims to be a standard warrior, not an elite. While his combat skills are exceptional, his physiological metrics fall within normal human parameters according to the data we have collected from Earth. And you believe this claim? Pravik asked skeptically. I have no basis to dispute it, I replied carefully. More importantly, even if this human represents the upper percentile of their capabilities, the data suggests that many humans could pose similar challenges to our forces. Pravik paced the laboratory, his claws clicking against the metal flooring. The Dominion Council is reconsidering our approach to Earth conquest. The resource expenditure may exceed initial projections. You mean you are scared? Reid interjected. The Admiral whirled toward him, facial ridges fully extended in threat display. The Dominion fears nothing. Human. Sure looks like fear from where I'm standing. Reid replied calmly. You expected an easy conquest, and now you are realizing humans might actually be able to fight back effectively. One human defeating a Karvax does not equate to victory against the Dominion fleet, Pravik hissed. No, but millions of humans using the same adaptive thinking might, Reid countered. You Velrakians rely on overwhelming force and genetic superiority. Humans rely on innovation and unpredictability. History suggests the latter usually wins in the long run. I watched this exchange with growing concern. The human was deliberately provoking the Admiral, a dangerous strategy given Pravic's legendary temper. "Admiral," I intervened, "perhaps we should discuss alternative approaches to Earth. The human has suggested possibilities for coexistence." "Coexistence?" Pravic interrupted incredulously. "The Dominion does not coexist. We conquer or we avoid. There is no middle ground." Reid leaned forward. "That kind of binary thinking is exactly why you'd lose a war with humanity. We specialize in finding third options." "Such as?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Trade," Reid suggested. "Earth has resources, art, culture, things the Dominion might value without needing to conquer us. Military alliance is another possibility. Humans could be valuable assets against your other enemies." Pravic made the distinctive huffing sound that indicated Velrakian contempt. "The Dominion needs no allies." "Everyone needs allies eventually," Reid replied. "The universe is too big and too strange for any species to face it alone." Before Pravic could respond, a piercing alarm sounded throughout the ship. The Admiral immediately activated his communication implant. "Report," he demanded. The response came through the laboratory's communication system as well. "Admiral, we have detected multiple unknown vessels approaching at high velocity. They are not responding to identification requests." Pravic's eyes narrowed. "Battle stations. Repair defensive." The ship suddenly shuddered violently, throwing us all off balance. The lights flickered and emergency systems activated. "Direct hit to our propulsion systems," came the panicked report. "Unknown weapon technology. Shields are holding but degrading rapidly." Reid stood calmly amidst the chaos, watching Pravic with interest. "Seems like you have made some other enemies besides humans." "This is impossible," Pravic hissed. "No species in this sector possesses technology capable of penetrating our defenses so quickly." Another impact rocked the ship, more violent than the first. The laboratory's reinforced doors sealed automatically as emergency protocols engaged. "Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported the increasingly distressed tactical officer. "Admiral, we have identified the attackers. They are human vessels." The laboratory fell silent as we all processed this information. Reid's expression transformed from casual confidence to genuine surprise. "That's not possible," he said, more to himself than to us. "Earth doesn't have ships capable of interstellar travel, let alone weapons that could damage a Velrakian cruiser." Pravic rounded on him. "You claim ignorance? This is clearly a rescue operation for you." Reid shook his head. "I'm as confused as you are, Admiral. Unless—" His voice trailed off as realization dawned on his face. "Unless what?" I demanded. "Unless you are not the first aliens to visit Earth," Reid said slowly. "Maybe someone else made contact before you, someone who saw humans as potential allies rather than conquests." The implication hung heavy in the air, interrupted by another bone-jarring impact. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated momentarily, sending loose equipment floating before crashing back down. "Admiral," came another communication. "The human vessels are deploying smaller craft. They appear to be boarding parties." Pravic's facial ridges flattened completely against his skull, the Velrakian expression of extreme alarm. "How many?" "Dozens, sir. They are targeting multiple entry points simultaneously." The Admiral turned to me. "Secure the human specimen. He is now our most valuable bargaining chip." "I wouldn't count on that strategy," Reid cautioned. "If those are really humans out there, taking hostages will only make them more determined." "Silence," Pravic roared, his composure finally breaking. "This was your plan all along. You allowed yourself to be captured, knowing rescue would come." Reid laughed, the sound jarringly incongruous with our dire situation. "Trust me, Admiral, I'm as surprised as you are. But I'm not going to complain about the timing." The ship's internal communication system suddenly crackled with unfamiliar voices speaking in human languages. Somehow they had already breached our security protocols. "Attention, Velrakian vessel," came a stern voice in perfectly translated Galactic Standard. "This is Captain Ileana Vasquez of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have detected a captured human life sign aboard your ship. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded, or we will be forced to take more aggressive action." Pravic stared at the communication system in disbelief. "Earth Defense Fleet? This is impossible." Reid smiled, that unnerving smile again. "Like I said, Admiral, humans specialize in finding third options. Looks like while you were studying us, Someone else was helping us study you. The laboratory door suddenly sparked as something began cutting through its reinforced structure from the outside. Pravik backed away, drawing his ceremonial weapon. "I will not surrender my ship to primitives," he declared. Reid looked at me, his expression suddenly serious. "Doc, you might want to step away from the Admiral. Things are about to get complicated." I hesitated, torn between my scientific curiosity and my sense of duty to the Dominion. In that moment of indecision, the laboratory door breached, and armored figures poured through the opening. They were unmistakably human, though their equipment was far more advanced than anything we had observed in our surveillance of Earth. Their weapons hummed with energy that even my limited military knowledge recognized as dangerously powerful. "Marcus Reid, Force Recon," Reid called out, hands raised. "Nice of you folks to drop by." The lead figure removed her helmet, revealing a human female with dark skin and determined eyes. "Staff Sergeant Reid. The Coalition representative said you'd probably get yourself into trouble during first contact." "Coalition," I repeated, my scientific curiosity overriding my fear. The woman glanced at me, then back to Reid. "He doesn't know," Reid shrugged. "The Velrakians planned to conquer Earth. They weren't exactly focused on galactic politics. Will someone explain what is happening?" Pravik demanded, his weapon still raised, though he was now surrounded by human soldiers. "Simple, Admiral," Reid said. "About 10 years ago, Earth was contacted by a coalition of spacefaring species who believed in cooperation rather than conquest. They have been quietly helping us develop our own technology while keeping it hidden from expansionist empires like yours. The Galactic Coalition," the female human elaborated, "believes that all sentient species have the right to develop without interference from conquering forces. Earth joined 3 years ago." I stared at Reid in dawning comprehension. "You were bait." He nodded. "When Coalition intelligence detected your scout ships, they needed to assess your intentions. I volunteered to get captured so we could learn about Velrakian capabilities firsthand." "A deception," Karvax hissed. "Dishonorable," says the guy planning to conquer an entire planet, Reid countered. "But here's the good news, Admiral. Nobody has to die today. The Coalition isn't interested in destroying the Velrakian Dominion. They just want you to reconsider your expansion policy." The female human Captain Vasquez stepped forward. "Admiral Pravik, I am authorized to offer you and your crew safe passage back to your territory, provided you agree to diplomatic talks with Coalition representatives." Pravik's facial ridges fluttered in confusion. "You are not claiming our ship as a prize, taking us as prisoners." "Not our style," Reid explained. "Humans might be really good at fighting, Admiral, but we prefer not to when given the choice. That's the lesson I was trying to teach you all along." I watched as understanding slowly transformed Pravik's expression. The mighty Admiral of the Velrakian Dominion, faced with an enemy that could defeat him but chose not to, seemed genuinely perplexed. "I require time to consult with the High Command," he finally said, lowering his weapon. "Of course," Vasquez agreed. "We will escort you to your communication center." As the humans led Pravik away, Reid turned to me with that now familiar smile. "So, Doc, got enough data for your report on human capabilities?" I couldn't help but return the gesture with my own Velrakian equivalent. "I believe my initial assessment was correct. If understated, humans are indeed the most dangerous species we have encountered, not despite your physical limitations, but because of how you have evolved to overcome them." Reid extended his hand in the human greeting gesture, and this time I accepted it. "For what it's worth," he said, "I think Velrakians and humans could learn a lot from each other, under better circumstances." As his warm hand clasped my scaled one, I realized he was right. Our species were fundamentally different in biology and philosophy, yet in this moment of understanding perhaps something new was beginning. "I believe that would make for a fascinating research project," I agreed. "One worthy of many cycles of study." Reid laughed. "I will drink to that, Doc. First round's on me." And as I watched the human stride confidently from the laboratory to rejoin his kind, I knew with absolute certainty that the galaxy would never be the same again. The Velrakian Dominion had encountered its match not in strength or ferocity, but in adaptability, ingenuity, and perhaps most surprisingly, mercy. Sometimes, as I would later record in my final report, the most dangerous predator isn't the one that kills without hesitation, but the one that chooses not to when given every reason to do so. That, more than anything, is what makes humans truly terrifying.